Millionaire enters the hospital and hears poor twins whisper, "Are you the man from Mum's photo?" The glass doors of Mercy General Hospital slid open with a mechanical whisper as Marcus Sterling stepped inside, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished linoleum floor. At 42, Marcus had grown accustomed to commanding attention wherever he went. His tailored charcoal suit, platinum watch, and confident stride were the armor of a man who had built a tech empire from nothing. Today's routine executive health screening was just another item to check off his meticulously planned schedule. The hospital's antiseptic smell hit him immediately, mixing with the underlying scent of fear and hope that seemed to permeate every medical facility. Marcus pulled out his phone, already mentally reviewing the afternoon's board meeting while navigating toward the elevator that would take him to the VIP medical wing on the 7th floor. But as he passed through the crowded emergency room, a shortcut his assistant had mentioned, something made him pause. The ER was a symphony of controlled chaos. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency between beds, separated by thin curtains. Their scrubs, a rainbow of blues and greens against the sterile white walls. The November rain pelted against the tall windows, casting dancing shadows across the waiting area where dozens of people sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs, each lost in their own world of worry. It was then that Marcus saw them. Two children, no more than 8 years old, sat huddled together in the far corner of the waiting room. They were identical twins, a boy and a girl, with dark hair that needed cutting and clothes that had seen better days. The girl wore a faded pink sweater with a small hole near the elbow, while the boy's jeans were too short, revealing worn sneakers that had been patched with duct tape. What stopped Marcus cold wasn't their poverty. He'd grown up poor himself, in Detroit's East Side, before clawing his way to Silicon Valley success. It was the way they looked at him. Recognition flickered in their wide brown eyes, the same shade as rich coffee, and they whispered to each other in urgent, hushed tones. The girl tugged at her brother's sleeve, pointing discreetly in Marcus's direction. The boy squinted, studying Marcus's face with an intensity that made the millionaire's chest tighten inexplicably. Marcus found himself walking toward them, drawn by an invisible thread he couldn't name. The children watched his approach with a mixture of hope and terror, their small hands clasped together. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly, crouching down to their eye level. Up close, he could see the dark circles under their eyes, the way their clothes hung loose on their thin frames. "Are you two okay? Where are your parents?" The twins exchanged another glance, communicating in that silent language that only siblings share. Finally, the girl found her voice, barely above a whisper. Are you the man from Mom's photo?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. His mind raced, trying to process words that made no sense, yet felt profoundly important. "I'm sorry, what photo?" The boy reached into a small, worn backpack at his feet and carefully pulled out a manila envelope, its edges soft from handling. With trembling fingers, he extracted a photograph and held it up to Marcus. The world tilted. It was an old Polaroid, the colors slightly faded but still clear enough to recognize. A younger version of himself, maybe 25, with longer hair, and a much less expensive suit, stood next to a beautiful woman with flowing dark hair and those same coffee brown eyes. They were at some kind of outdoor festival, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something off camera. On the back, written in feminine handwriting he remembered all too well, were the words, "Marcus and Elena, summer 2007, forever. Begins today. Elena Martinez," the woman who had disappeared from his life without explanation 17 years ago, leaving behind only questions and a broken heart that had never quite healed. "Where did you get this?" Marcus's voice was hoarse, his usual composure cracking. "It's Mama's," the girl said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. She keeps it in her special box. She told us that if anything ever happened to her, we should find the man in the picture. Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. What's your mother's name? Elena Vasquez, the boy answered. But she used to be Elena Martinez before she married Papa Joe. He died 2 years ago. The pieces began falling into place with devastating clarity. Elena had been pregnant when she disappeared. The timing, the children's ages, their eyes, his eyes, it all made horrible, beautiful sense. Where is your mother? Now? Marcus asked, though part of him already dreaded the answer. The twins looked at each other again, and fresh tears spilled down their cheeks. She's upstairs, the girl whispered. Room 314, the doctors say she's very sick. Something with her brain. There was an accident at her work last week. Marcus's world compressed to this moment, this revelation, these two small faces that held pieces of his own features reflected back at him. His children, Elena's children, their children. What are your names? He managed to ask. I'm Sophia, the girl said, and this is Miguel. We're 8 years old. Our birthday was last month, but Mama was already too sick to have a party. 8 years old. Born 9 months after Elena had vanished from his life without a word, without an explanation, without a goodbye. Marcus stood slowly, his legs unsteady. Around them, the ER continued its rhythm of urgent care and quiet desperation. But for him, everything had changed. The successful businessman who had walked into this hospital 20 minutes ago no longer existed. In his place stood a man confronting a past he thought he understood and a future he couldn't begin to imagine. Take me to her, he said quietly. Take me to your mother. As they rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, Marcus stared at his reflection in the polished steel doors. Behind him, Sophia held his hand with a trust that both humbled and terrified him, while Miguel clutched the photograph like a lifeline. The elevator dinged softly as they reached the 3rd floor, and the doors opened to reveal a long corridor lined with patient rooms. At the end of the hall, room 314 waited with answers to questions Marcus had carried for 17 years, and questions he'd never thought to ask. But as they walked down that corridor, Sophia's small hand in his, Marcus realized that whatever lay ahead would change not just his understanding of the past, but the entire trajectory of his future. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure his money and influence would be enough to fix what was broken. The sounds of their footsteps echoed off the hospital walls as they approached room 314, where Eleanor, the woman who had haunted his dreams for nearly 2 decades, lay fighting a battle that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of the family Marcus never knew he had. Room 314 was dimmer than the hallway, with only the soft glow of medical monitors providing light beyond what filtered through the rain-streaked window. The rhythmic beeping of machines created a mechanical lullaby that seemed both comforting and ominous. Elena lay still in the hospital bed, her once vibrant dark hair now streaked with premature gray and spread across the white pillow like spilled ink. Even in unconsciousness, her face retained the delicate beauty that had captivated Marcus all those years ago, though now it was etched with lines of struggle and hardship he had never seen. Tubes and wires connected her to various machines, and a bandage wrapped around her head spoke to the severity of her condition. The twins moved to either side of her bed with practiced familiarity, Sophia gently taking her mother's hand while Miguel adjusted the thin hospital blanket. The doctors said she fell at the factory where she works, Sophia explained quietly, her voice steady in the way children learn when they've had to grow up too fast. She was cleaning windows on the 2nd floor and the ladder broke. She hit her head really bad. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by the scene before him. This wasn't how he had imagined their reunion during the countless nights. He'd wondered what had become of Elena Martinez. In his fantasies, she had always been healthy, successful, happy, perhaps married to someone who deserved her in ways he hadn't been ready for at 25. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, stepping closer to the bed. 5 days, Miguel answered. "The doctors keep saying things like wait and see and give it time, but we can tell they're worried." Marcus looked at Elena's peaceful face and felt the weight of 17 years of unanswered questions pressing down on him. Why had she left? Why hadn't she told him about the pregnancy? How had she managed to raise these beautiful children alone? A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. A woman in her 60s entered, clearly Latina, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, and kind eyes that immediately assessed Marcus with protective concern. "Mia," she said to Sophia, "who is this man?" Sophia looked up at Marcus, then back at the woman. "Abuela Carmen, this is the man from Mama's photo, the one she told us to find." Carmen's expression shifted from wariness to shock as she studied Marcus's face. Her hand went to her heart, and she whispered something in Spanish under her breath. "Dios mío," she said, switching to accented English. "You are Marcus Sterling." The use of his full name surprised him. "You know who I am." Carmen moved closer, her eyes never leaving his face. "Elena, she talked about you. Not often, but when she thought the children couldn't hear, she followed your success in the newspapers, the business magazines. She was proud, even though..." "Even though what?" Carmen glanced at the twins, then gestured for Marcus to follow her to the corner of the room where they could speak more privately. "She never stopped loving you," Carmen said quietly, "but she was afraid. Afraid you would think she trapped you on purpose. Afraid your family would think she was just some poor girl trying to get your money. When she found out she was pregnant, you had already started talking about moving to California, about the big opportunities waiting there." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "She should have told me. I would have..." "What? Stayed? Give up your dreams?" Carmen's voice was gentle but firm. "Elena, she knew you, Marcus, maybe better than you knew yourself. She saw how your eyes lit up when you talked about Silicon Valley, about changing the world with technology. She loved you enough to let you go." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. All these years he had assumed Elena had simply decided he wasn't worth staying for. The possibility that she had sacrificed her own happiness and his chance to be a father out of love had never occurred to him. "But she struggled," Carmen continued, glancing at the twins who were now whispering to their unconscious mother. "Raising 2 babies alone, working 3 jobs. When she married Joe Vasquez 4 years later, it wasn't for love. It was for stability, for a father figure for the children. Joe was a good man, but he died in a construction accident 2 years ago. Since then, Elena, she's been working at that factory 60 hours a week just to keep food on the table." Marcus looked back at Sophia and Miguel, seeing them now not just as his children, but as evidence of Elena's incredible strength and sacrifice. They were well-behaved, articulate, clearly loved, all despite the hardships they'd faced. "The medical bills," he said suddenly. "How are you handling the medical bills?" Carmen's shoulders sagged. "We're not." "The factory, they're saying the accident was Elena's fault, that she didn't follow safety procedures. Their insurance won't pay. And we don't have money for lawyers to fight them." Marcus pulled out his phone, his mind already working. "What's the name of the factory?" "Sterling Industries Manufacturing," Carmen said, then paused as she registered the irony. "Why?" The phone nearly slipped from Marcus's fingers. Sterling Industries Manufacturing, one of dozens of companies in his corporate and portfolio, managed by executives he rarely interacted with directly. Elena had been working for him without either of them knowing it. "I need to make some calls," he said, his voice tight with a mixture of rage and determination. Over the next hour, Marcus stepped into the hallway and made a series of phone calls that would have far-reaching consequences. He spoke with his corporate lawyers, his insurance executives, and finally with the plant manager who had signed off on Elena's case denial. The conversation with the plant manager was brief and decisive. "Mr. Sterling, I had no idea you were personally involved in this case," the man stammered. "Mrs. Vasquez's accident occurred because of equipment failure, not employee negligence," Marcus said, his voice carrying the cold authority that had built his empire. "You will immediately approve full medical coverage, and you will implement a comprehensive safety review of all equipment. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir." When Marcus returned to room 314, he found the twins had fallen asleep in chairs beside their mother's bed, their small bodies finally succumbing to exhaustion. Carmen sat knitting quietly, her presence a steady comfort in the sterile environment. "It's been taken care of," Marcus said quietly. "All of it, the medical bills, the insurance claim, everything." Carmen looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "But Marcus, what about after? Elena, she may need months of rehabilitation if she wakes up. The children they'll have everything they need," Marcus said firmly. "I should have been here 17 years ago. I can't change that, but I can be here now." As if summoned by his words, Elena stirred slightly in her bed. Her eyelids fluttered, and a soft moan escaped her lips. The twins woke immediately, rushing to her side. "Mama," Sophia whispered. "Mama, can you hear us?" Elena's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually finding her children's faces. A weak smile crossed her lips. "Miss Bebes," she whispered. "Are you okay?" "We're fine, Mama," Miguel said, taking her hand. "We found him. We found the man from your photo." Elena's gaze shifted across the room until it found Marcus standing in the shadows near the window. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across the years and the pain and the love that had never quite died. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely audible. He moved to her bedside, his successful businessman's composure finally cracking completely. "I'm here, Elena, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Tears streamed down her face as she tried to sit up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Marcus gently took her, free hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. "We have a lot to talk about," he said softly. "But right now, you just need to focus on getting better. We have time, all the time in the world." Sophia and Miguel looked between their parents with wonder and hope dawning in their young eyes. For the first time in their lives, they were seeing their family complete. Outside, the November rain continued to fall on the city, washing the streets clean. But inside room 314 of Mercy General Hospital, something much more profound was happening. A family that had been broken by fear and misunderstanding was slowly beginning to heal, bound together by love that had survived 17 years of separation and the uncertain promise of whatever tomorrow might bring. As Marcus held Elena's hand and watched his children, their children, smile for the first time since he'd met them, he realized that all of his business success paled in comparison to this moment. He had spent years building an empire, but here in this hospital room, he was finally building something that truly mattered, a family. The road ahead would be challenging. Elena's recovery would take time, and they would all need to learn how to be a family together. But as Marcus looked around the room at the faces of the people who had just become his whole world, he knew that every obstacle would be worth overcoming. For the first time in 17 years, Marcus Sterling was exactly where he belonged. The end. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to Millionaire Mindset Tales and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Also, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city, country, or even a flag emoji in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. And of course, if this touched your heart, leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for being here.